Stop the flow of refugees.
Talking, would you shoot down Russian planes?
I would create the no-fly zone.
Yes.
I would
Yes.
I would create the no-fly zone, and let me tell you something very simply. Putin is a bully, and the most important punch him in the face. That space, either us or the Turks should shoot him down to keep our word. And I guarantee you that Putin would back off. Bullies, when you stand up to them, back down. We have had, under Obama and under Hillary as Secretary of State, nothing but weakness in the face of Russia, whether it was in the Crimea, whether it was in Ukraine, or now in the Middle East. I would give the Ukrainians lethal weapons so they could defend themselves. I would create the no-fly zone. And if Russian planes flew into it in violation of what we had declared, yes.
Senator Graham.
Yeah, this is an important. Until Obama came. When you Syrians to join your cause, to take down the dictator they hate, to destroy ISIL, which will attack our homeland, and you sit on the sidelines and watch the Russian president kill them, it makes it harder for us to get partners in the future. The point I'm trying to make is we got to mean what we say. And I am begging people to wake up to Syria. The next 9/11 is coming from Syria.
Senator Graham.
It's coming soon. We better do something about it, and I have a plan.
Senator Graham, we've heard here tonight a lot about the fact that you want to send U.S. troops, ground troops, into Iraq and Syria to defeat ISIS.
Yeah.
Would you consider reinstating the draft? Complete that.
After 33 years, 140 days on the ground as an Air Force reservist. To those who are watching, thank you for your service. I've had a small walk in your shoes. We have the best military in the world. Obama has put it in a box. Let's take it and use it before we get a chief who knows what the hell they're doing.
Governor Huckabee.
And I am that guy.
Governor Huckabee, would you reinstate the draft?
I wouldn't reinstate a draft, but I think it's noteworthy that we are fighting all the battles we have with less than one population. Ever. And if you want a college education, let's go back and reinstate the full-blown GI Bill. You give something to your country gives something back to you. We need to my good friend Ken Allard, former dean of the War College, has often said, we're fighting all the wars with other people's kids. And that's one of the things that's making us much less safe, is because we don't have enough Americans truly invested. Therefore, I do
This is important. We're not fighting all the wars with our kids. If you've been to Iraq and Afghanistan and you made any friends, you've lost a bunch. Thousands have died in Iraq and Afghanistan. Don't belittle their sacrifice.
I'm not belittling their sacrifice, Lindsay, but I'm just making note that on the part of Americans, we have sent National Guard troops over for an 18-month deployment. They come back for 5, they go back for another 18. We're wearing these guys out. They agreed to be citizen soldiers. We've turned them into full-time soldiers because we've not kept up the pace by recruiting enough people in the military to fully fill these forces, and that's what we need to be doing.
Senator Graham?
No.
Senator Graham,
to those, the dwell times in the Army were a bigger problem than they are today. You want to fix this, you get the Army to 500,000, not 420,000. You want to win this war, grow the Navy to 350 ships, not 2. Sequence dumb things. 15, the smallest army since 1940, I was yelling and screaming, don't do sequestration. I was right. If I am President of the United States, Commander-in-Chief, we're going to rebuild our military without a draft. They're ready to be led.
Senator, earlier this month, the Pentagon opened all U.S. military combat positions to women. You previously opposed allowing women in combat roles. As president, would you change the Pentagon's new policy?
I would use the studies that were done that were ignored by this military, that there were certain positions that were not suitable. And they pushed a political agenda above what is in the best interest of the safety, security, and effectiveness of our fighting units. So I would go back to using what we should be doing, which is putting forth people on those frontline positions who are best prepared to do the job, survive the job, and come back home safely.
So just to be clear, you're saying yes, you would change the policy back?
I would change the policy to reflect what is the best interest of the people that we're asking. I've got a son who's going into the Air Force right now, and as a father, I want to make sure that if he's out there on the front line, and he may be a pilot flying an airplane, I want to make sure that the person who's responsible for his wing has the ability to do the job they're doing. And if they don't have that ability to do the job, if we're doing it social promotion as opposed to what's best for the efficacy of our fighting force and for the survivability of our men and women, I'll change that policy.
Governor, and Afghanistan. The policy as president, or do you agree with Senator Santana?
No, I completely disagree with Rick. This is America, and we've made enormous progress. And I don't care if you're a man or a woman. I care if you're good and capable of doing the job. If you can do the job, don't lower standards, don't lower the criteria. But if a woman is capable of doing these jobs, there is no reason why we should deny a patriot who wants to serve and help defend our country that right.
Senator Santorum?
So what you just said is you agree with me. Because that's exactly what I said. I said if you can't do the job, you shouldn't be able to, you shouldn't have the position.
No, you said you would reverse the policy which excluded women from those jobs whether or not they were able to do that.
No,
that is wrong.
I did not say that, George. I mean, you may have heard that, but I didn't say that. What I said was if they can, in fact, do the job that any other person can do, I would allow them to do so. But if they cannot, I would reverse the policy. And what happened here is there were many studies done, particularly in the Marine Corps, which begged this president not to move forward with this because people are going to get killed as a result of it. The president went forward anyway. That is not looking out after the best interests of anybody, including women, in that frontline position.
Governor Pataki, did you have a final response?
Yeah, I think what Rick said is very different from what he said initially, which is that he would reverse the policy that gave women not the right but the opportunity to serve in combat. They can only do it if they're fit and capable and meet the same standards as men. So to reverse that policy and deny a woman who is prepared to risk her life to defend our freedom and is capable of doing everything a man could do is for America. The Peshmerga of their tigers are women. This is the 21st century. We're not radical Islam. We want to give women the opportunity to do whatever they are capable of achieving in this country.
Governor Pataki, let me stick with you. Governor Pataki, U.S. Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl now facing a court-martial after leaving his base in Afghanistan, getting captured by the Taliban. Donald Trump has called for his execution. The former House Speaker John Boehner says he's innocent until proven guilty. Where do you stand?
Well, I happen to believe whether or not he deserted in the face of the enemy, and they are now court-martialing him. I don't think he should be executed. I do think he will have a fair military trial, not a civilian trial, at which time, assuming he's found guilty, as I think he would, he will be sentenced appropriately. But there's a bigger issue here. This administration has failed to protect us because they have treated radical Islamists as Americans who should be tried in civil court. That is ridiculous. They are enemy aliens engaged in terror America. And by the way, the fact that this president is now threatening to close Guantanamo Bay when we know that time after time terrorists he released are involved in a high-level capacity helping ISIS and al-Qaeda is a disgrace. Ask Hillary Clinton, will she keep Guantanamo Bay open so that Americans can be safe and terrorists kept from going back to the battlefield?
Senator Graham, where do you stand?
Well, I stand unique, having been a military lawyer for 33 years. I've been a defense attorney, a prosecutor, and a military judge. Mr. Trump, you don't have to speak about everything that's not required. Make sure that everybody had a fair trial. Does that make sense to you? We're at war, folks, and this stuff has to stop. It's bad for morale to hear somebody wanting to be commander-in-chief that would deny due process to somebody who's been charged in the military. For God's sakes, Mr. Trump, you're asking to be the commander-in-chief, the leader of the free world. Up your game. As to women, if you want to kill terrorists, I am your guy.
Governor Huckabee. Governor Huckabee, ISIS demanded ransom. The U.S. government discouraged them. Since then, U.S. policy has changed. As president, would you support families of the approximately 30 Americans being held worldwide if they chose to pay ransom?
Those families have to go blood to get them back. It's a terrible policy because once we do it, we're only going to invite more and more hostages, more and more ransoms, and the disaster gets even worse. But I don't blame these families. You know who I blame? I blame a policy in our government that has made it so that families are so desperate that they're willing to pay ransom to terrorist organizations because they don't believe our government will fight the fight for them, and they think they're out there on their own. My goodness, people, this is America. When did we have to start telling people that you've got to bake your own bread in order to fight the battles? That's what we have a government for. It's what we pay taxes for. And I believe those families ought to have a better expectation of what this government will do. We should never have sat at the table with the Iranians as long as Saeed Abedini is sitting in an Iranian prison, as long as the Washington Post reporter is over there. Until the 4 hostages of America were on an airplane safely out of Tehran, we should have told them, we won't even walk into the room with you, much less sit down and negotiate with you. That's what we ought to be doing.
Thank you, Governor. Governor Pataki. Speaking of those 4 Americans being held in Iran right now, Iran has suggested they might be willing to have a prisoner swap, release Iranian prisoners held in the United States in exchange for those 4 Americans. Would you support that?
You know, again, it comes down to something that, as Mike said, breaks your heart. We clearly want to get them back. But the idea that by taking a journalist, for example, and holding him hostage in Iran, they're going to be terrorist leaders simply bad. Israel has shown the way on this and rejecting hostage exchanges such as this and in not paying ransom. But by the way, Mike's absolutely right. We have to do more to protect our people overseas. But then we also have to do more to help our veterans when they come back here today. We haven't talked about that. But when we're talking about defeating terrorism, one of the things we have to do is give our veterans the support and help that they require. What has happened at the VA is a disgrace. Give our veterans a medical card that they can use to get the best quality care anywhere, including outside of the VA system.
We have to take a quick break, but Governor, Israel has exchanged a lot of the prisoners it was holding for Israeli soldiers who were being held by Hamas, for example.
But that was involved in combat, where they were actually involved in a war against each other and exchanged prisoners. We have not been in a war with Iran. They have taken civilians as hostages. It's a totally different situation, and we cannot encourage them to do any more.
Thank you. Let's take another quick break. The scramble to protect Americans after ISIS attacks from the inside. Does the country need to tighten its borders to prevent another San Bernardino slaughter? Where the candidates stand